Something truly revolutionary is about to hit the sports and app world, and there's an opportunity for you to be a huge part in it and to translate this app's success into your own direct monthly revenues. But here's the crazy thing. The app has a serious potential to be so successful and so profitable that at first glance you're probably going to think this is too good to be true. I can imagine it may even come across as a scam or a gimmick to many of you. All I ask is that you stay with me, hear me out, watch these few videos so that you truly understand the game, the business model, and your affiliate opportunity to earn revenues, and after that make your decision as to whether this is something that you're interested in or not. So if you haven't heard yet, a sleeping giant is about to emerge. $1 billion company is coming that has less than 4% of paying customers. Companies in this industry, on general, have average customer retention rates of almost 10 years. In general, in this industry, the customers share the game or app with 7 other customers. But what's new that this new game is bringing is an opportunity for affiliates to generate commissions by simply sharing the free game. Let's take a quick look at the app world as it stands now. The current trends as of 2015 are as follows. 100 billion apps were downloaded and $45 billion in revenue was generated in the app world. However, the projected growth for the app industry is even crazier. By 2017, it's projected that 268 billion apps will be downloaded. That's a 168% increase in just 2 years. And by 2020, it's projected that $200 billion in revenue will be earned through the app industry. Just take a look at the recent success of Pokemon Go. We'll take a little bit more of a deeper look into Pokemon Go in the future videos, and we'll even get into an example of it. But don't just take my word for it. Here's one of the greatest tech gurus of all time just a few years ago discussing the app boom that he saw coming and that he believed will be the next revolution.
Something really interesting is happening on mobile phones. They're not mirroring desktops or laptop PCs. And then people are not spending their time searching. They're not doing searching anywhere near as much as they do on PCs. We've got all the data. We know this. They're spending their time in apps. So for whatever reason, if people want to find out that restaurant to go to, they're not going to their search engine and typing in Japanese in Palo Alto, they're going to Yelp or whatever other app they want to go to find out if their airplane's on time or this or that or this or that. And I don't know why it's different than on PCs. I think I do, but I'm not sure. I think it's because there never was one place with 200,000 apps where a ton of them were free and the rest of them were really inexpensive for PCs. I think this app thing is an entirely new phenomenon in my lifetime and your lifetime. So I think people are using apps, well, we know they're using apps way more than they're using search. So
Alright, so let's take a look at a few examples of current apps and see how they're doing. Clash Royale has daily revenues of over 1.5 million with daily installs of over 121,000. Another game you may be familiar with, Clash of Clans, has daily revenues of almost 1.2 million and daily installs of over 24,000. Now the thing about these 4 games that are on your screen is they are all games of war. And when Americans were polled, only 4% claimed that they played games of war. In comparison, Pokemon Go already has 10% of the American population playing it. And when we show you some of the sports numbers that are out there and how many people watch and follow and are interested and consume sports, these numbers will be mind-boggling. Let's go ahead and take a closer look at Pokemon Go. This app launched in the US, Australia, and New Zealand on July 6th, and after just 2 weeks, it had over 75 million downloads. But it was only available in 32 out of a possible 100 markets that Apple iOS and the Android exist. That means it still had 68 possible markets to move to. At this time, the average user was spending over 43 minutes a day on it. That's more than Snapchat, Twitter, Instagram, or Tinder. And in just this 2-week period, Nintendo's stock increased over 20%. Now let's get into a little bit of how freemium play works, and we'll do this by looking at an example of an app I'm sure you're familiar with, Candy Crush. So freemium means that a product is provided for free, and features, virtual goods, or extra functionality are provided for a charge. With Candy Crush, 96% of players are playing this game completely for free and they're sharing it with their friends. Candy Crush has quarterly revenues of $500 million and nearly $1 million is generated daily from freemium play. And we're building a game that works off a very similar strategy as far as generating huge revenues off freemium play. So let's switch focus now and get into fantasy sports, which are also huge. 56.8 million of people in the US and Canada play fantasy, and they spend an average of over 8.5 hours a week consuming fantasy sports. That's even more than Pokemon Go. But sports fans are where the real numbers are. Over 290 million Americans watch sports. That's 90% of the population. The average time spent consuming sports by an American is over 17.5 hours per week. And Americans spend over $35 billion a year on sports and sports-related merchandise, over $100 billion a year on sports gaming like fantasy sports, and over $800 billion a year on sports gambling. So what we found is that fantasy sports is covering just a sliver of the sports market, because nearly 20% of Americans play fantasy sports, but 90% consider themselves sports fans. So what is fantasy missing? We know we have one of the biggest markets in America and in the world with the sports market, yet only 20% of them are willing to play fantasy sports. So there has to be a game that can relate to the other 70% of sports fans out there. To figure out what kind of game we should build to resonate with these fans, we started by looking at what the reasons were that they don't play fantasy sports. Here are the top 10 reasons that were given by the 70% of fans out there who aren't interested in playing fantasy. They believe the odds are stacked against new players, and it's easy to lose money and very hard to win. This is especially true for daily fantasy sports, in which 1% of the players are winning 99% of the money. They also believe that it changes the way they used to watch the game watching with their friends is affected, and it affects how they choose which game to watch. So this has to do with needing to follow and watch certain players and statistics rather than being able to watch certain teams and games just for pure enjoyment. These fans also believe that fantasy is too much about stats and not enough about fun, and that they're compelled to play with other teams' players. This is especially true for people outside of America, such as European soccer fans who are extremely loyal to their own team and aren't willing to play with any other team's players or to root for them. They also believe it takes too much time to get good, or that it requires extra software or money and tools to be a pro, and that it's a spreadsheet interactive experience. So we know that there's the potential there to create a game which resonates with the fans that have all these beliefs and these reasonings for not playing fantasy. So here's how we plan to capture the majority of the sports market that's not playing fantasy sports. We have a market that's 5 times bigger than the fantasy sports market, but no one's appealing to them. Well, what if we took all the reasons that people aren't playing fantasy out of the equation and we give them a reason to play? That's what we're going to do with this game, and we're doing it in the mobile app space. It's going to be huge. So far in this presentation, the numbers that I've thrown out to you for the sports market and fantasy sports world are just America or North American numbers, but we haven't even talked about the global market. The game we're building is going to capitalize on that whole global market. Most fantasy sports sites focus on just the big American sports, football, basketball, and baseball. But these 3 aren't even in the top 3 of global sports. The top 3 global sports are soccer, cricket, and tennis. Over 3.4 billion people watched the last World Cup. And in addition to this, many fantasy sports sites don't focus on other large American and North American sports as well, such as NASCAR, which has an average attendance of 98,000 as compared to just 17,000 per NBA game. Fantasy sports also don't do a very good job of being played on just singular sporting events, such as the Olympics, the Tour de France, World Championships, or even NCAA bowl games or the NCAA tournaments. Fantasy sports just don't match up very well with singular games or tournaments of this nature, and the app we're building is going to be able to do this seamlessly. Alright, so enough with the hype. Let's get into a bit of what this game is actually going to be. The app's being built using the freemium model as we discussed previously when we talked about Candy Crush. It's also being built to be inherently social and viral by its very nature, just as Pokemon Go has been built to be. And it's being built to be played effortlessly. So not the stats or the research-based thinking that fantasy sports includes, but instead you'll be able to just simply pick up a phone and play any game at any time. Whether you know a ton about sports or whether you just want to watch a game with your friends or your wife's watching the game with you and she doesn't really care, but she just wants to play along with you, anyone will be able to play this game together. And there are two items that are really going to set this app apart, in my opinion. The first is real-time interactive play. The app's going to allow players to interact with live sporting events in real time. You're literally going to be able to play along and make live predictions with any game you're watching. The live interaction will be vital to this game's success and uniqueness. And the game's also going to be a social experience. Sports in general are something that people enjoy best socially. We like watching them together. We talk with others about them. If we hear people at work or at a store talking about our team or a game, we want to get involved in the conversation just naturally. We want to talk about these things. We like to celebrate them together. We debate them, trash talk, bond in many ways over sports. This game is going to allow players to watch the game like they're watching it with their friends at a bar. There's even going to be a live chat messaging feature, which will allow players to interact with friends and others they're playing against in live time as they watch the games together. So why are we different? Well, what we're building is a game versus gambling. It also allows players to have loyalty to their team or their game versus the NFL or any individual league. What we're building is a game experience instead of a stat experience, and all experience levels can play together. You also get a game-by-game experience, so you don't need any algorithms or advanced knowledge to be able to play this game. And you're able to play the game and not just the individual players. What we're building is also a social experience, so you can chat live and trash talk with other players. And you can play all games and all sporting events at any time, anywhere in the world. Now the next couple slides simply lay out a comparison of fantasy sports versus the better way to play. I'm going to let you guys go over these and read through them at your own leisure and refer back to these. We've gone over most of them in the presentation, so I think you're already pretty aware of them, and others are self-explanatory. But please, go forward and watch the next video, which is going to be an in-depth look in a deep dive into the game and how it's played. I think you're going to get real excited. You're going to want to play this game, and you're going to want to talk about it and tell your friends about it. And if you watch the video following that one, that's going to tell you how you're going to get paid a lot of money to do that as an affiliate sharing the free game.